It was 1602, a time of fear, superstition, and religious fervour. The streets of Salem, Massachusetts buzzed with whispers of evil, dark forces that threatened to destroy the very fabric of their Puritan society. Little did the people know, the true horror of the Salem Witch Trials wouldn't come from witches, but from the very people they thought were protecting them. Today, on History of Humans, we uncover the dark history of the Salem Witch Trials, a tale of lies, fear, and the persecution of the powerless. And we'll explore how this horrifying chapter in history still resonates today, especially when we consider the struggles of modern feminism and how the past continues to influence the fight for equality. January of 1602, it all began with a group of young girls in Salem Village, Betty Parris, Abigail Williams, and their friends, who began exhibiting strange behaviour. They convulsed, screamed, and claimed to see apparitions. They were afflicted, they said, by witches, sending the whole community into a state of hysteria. Betty Parris, the daughter of the local minister, Reverend Samuel Parris, was the first to show signs of possession. She fell into a trance, screamed, and threw herself on the ground. Soon, other girls in Salem followed suit, claiming they too were victims of witchcraft. Abigail Williams, Betty's cousin, was perhaps the most vocal and powerful of the group. With her wild accusations, she helped spark one of the most infamous witch hunts in history. But was Abigail just a pawn in a larger game, or was she an active participant in the chaos? As fear spread like wildfire, local ministers and authorities were quick to point fingers. Witchcraft was illegal and considered a grave sin, and these young girls were claiming that Satan himself was at work in their community. Soon, the accusations didn't stop at just a few girls. Women, particularly those who were already considered outsiders, became easy targets. The first person accused was Tituba, a slave from the Caribbean who worked in the Parris household. Tituba's story would become a turning point in the Salem Witch Trials. Tituba confessed to being a witch, but her confession was under duress. Torture, threats, and the overwhelming pressure to save her life pushed her to say what the authorities wanted to hear. Tituba's confession, however, didn't end the witch hunt. It only made it worse. She named others, fueling the fire of hysteria. It wasn't long before the accused were being dragged to trial. The authorities didn't need solid evidence, mere spectral evidence, or the claim that a person's spirit appeared to harm someone was enough to condemn them. And the list of names grew longer every day. Women like Sarah Good, an impoverished beggar, and Sarah Osborne, a widow, were among the first to be accused. In a culture steeped in religious righteousness, these women were deemed guilty not because they practiced witchcraft, but because they didn't conform to the strict societal expectations of women. But it wasn't just the accusers and the accused who played a role in the Salem Witch Trials. Some of the most influential figures were the judges, ministers, and political leaders who fueled the chaos. Judge Samuel Sewall was one of the chief judges overseeing the trials. He was a prominent figure in the community and was deeply religious. As the trials progressed, Sewall's conscience began to weigh heavily on him. After the trials ended, he was one of the few who publicly admitted his role in the unjust executions and even sought forgiveness for his part in the atrocities. Then there was Reverend Cotton Mather, a Puritan minister who is often remembered for his controversial role in the witch trials. Though he wasn't directly involved in the trials themselves, Mather's writings and sermons advocated for the prosecution of witches, and he believed the trials were divinely sanctioned. However, Mather later expressed regret for the mass executions. As the trials raged on, over 200 people were accused, and 20 people, mostly women, were executed. Eventually, the hysteria began to subside. the authorities grew skeptical of the claims, and many of the accusers recanted. But by then, the damage had been done. In 1693, the trials came to an end, and the Massachusetts colonial government disbanded the court that had condemned so many to death. But the scars left by the Salem Witch Trials would last far beyond the closing of those dark chapters. The Salem Witch Trials were not just about witches, they were about power. In a society where women had few rights and were often seen as inferior to men, the trials were a way to reinforce the existing power structures. Many of the women accused were marginalized, poor, or different in some way. Fast forward to today, and we still see echoes of the Salem Witch Trials in the struggles of modern feminism. The fight for women's rights continues as women around the world stand up against misogyny, inequality, and injustice. Just as the women of Salem were scapegoated, blamed for things beyond their control, and punished for defying societal expectations, modern women continue to fight against outdated norms. They battle sexism, stereotypes, and violence, demanding to be seen and heard. But unlike the women of Salem, who were silenced by fear and death, today's women are empowered to speak out, to demand justice, and to reshape society. They're reclaiming their voices in ways that the women of Salem could never have imagined. The Salem Witch Trials serve as a haunting reminder of the dangers of mass hysteria, blind obedience, and the way society has historically treated women. The echoes of this tragic event reverberate through time, calling us to reflect on how we treat those who are different, who challenge authority, or who simply dare to be themselves. In many ways, we are still fighting the same battles. The fight for equality and justice is far from over. But by learning from the past, we can shape a future where no one, especially women, will ever be falsely accused, persecuted, or punished for speaking out. The Salem Witch Trials were one of the darkest chapters in American history, rooted in fear, superstition, and the oppressive Puritan society of the time. In 1692, a group of young girls accused dozens of people, mostly women, of practicing witchcraft, triggering mass hysteria and a deadly witch hunt. The trials resulted in the execution of 20 innocent people and the imprisonment of many more, all based on flimsy evidence and the power of accusation. The women who were accused, like Tituba, Sarah Good, and Sarah Osborne, represented the marginalized members of society, the poor, the different, and the nonconformists. This tragedy serves as a powerful reminder of how societal fear and misogyny can lead to injustice. In modern times, we still see similar struggles as women fight for equality, safety, and justice. Let's ensure that history like this never repeats itself by continuing to speak up for the voiceless and challenging injustice. Thank you for watching History of Humans. If you found this video enlightening, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. And remember, history is not just a collection of past events, it's a mirror to our present and a guide to our future.